Dave Chappelle's my favorite when it comes to an altogether kind of thing. Dave Chappelle. But my favorite storyteller has to be Bert Kreischer just recently that I've really fallen into his work. One-liners, Jimmy Carr, of course. But if I was gonna have to say one, it's Dave Chappelle.
I think Dave Chappelle is I wouldn't call him the comedian's favorite, if that's the right word. I think he's very hot at the moment. A lot of people call him that he can dodge lasers. In the sense, I mean, not anymore so much. Right now, I think he's in hot waters with his trans talks and stuff like that.
I don't think that's the case with Dave Chappelle. I think what's going on with, of course, he doesn't dodge lasers. It's more of, I want to pass through them. I want to be able to talk about them. And the way he talks about them is very like, I'm going to talk about them just like how I'm going to talk about this person or that person. Just that happens to have the most backlash when he talks about that specific route. Now, there are a few people that have mentioned before that he personally really enjoys going through that. Like, he's doing it on purpose to get that kind of recognition, to get that kind of backlash. But I think it's more for him the art, because he kind of quits, then comes back, quits, then comes back. It's not necessarily because of the paycheck or anything like that.
I mean, what fascinates me with Dave Chappelle, and I think for every comedian at the moment, is the rise of attacks on comedian. Right? And it's happening on camera now. You know, you had that Will Smith famously where he slapped.
Oh, you're actually talking about literally attacks.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Forget like just verbal or media or anything like that. I mean, that's part of the game of a comedian. If people aren't upset with what you're saying, then you're not saying the right stuff, in my opinion, right? Yeah. Which concerns me is like the openness and the veilness of, you know, like they're happy that Dave Chappelle got attacked on stage with some guy just jumped on him, right? And
I didn't agree. Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't agree with that either in any sense. I'm just saying that it puts all comedians suddenly at risk, because if people can see like, hey, that dude got attacked for saying the wrong stuff. So if you're just starting out or you're just at a bar and just doing a stand-up routine, that puts that wrong mindset.
I see what you mean. I don't think necessarily it's going to blow up to that extreme. I think it was just because of the Dave Chappelle attack, and they saw how much that guy got contorted, how much trouble he got into. Most people kind of going like, oh, okay, that's not something I'm willing to go through. That's personally my personal take on that. But the thing that really pissed me off, like let's say the Chris Rock situation, Will Smith and Chris Rock. The thing that really annoyed me was the fact that people were rooting for him, like Will Smith. They were like, yes, that is how you treat, this is how you protect your wife and how you basically handle that. No, man, you don't embarrass someone for that in that way.
I mean, it's for me, it's far reaching than that, because if you want to be violent and vindictive, I think you do that either behind closed doors or you call him aside. You don't do it in front of the cameras on millions of people or billions of people watching 100%. At that point. Right? And that's my biggest problem with that aspect, because you're sending that message of Will Smith to the whole world and saying, you know what, if you don't agree with something or you feel offended by something, that gives you the right to go and attack.
No, of course, 100%. But at the same time, you have to also understand that My biggest thing is no comedian wants to actually, unless now they do. Now I've seen a lot of them do, but no one wants to go up on stage and go personally, I want to hurt some people in the audience. I want to actually offend them. Like, it wasn't that. Comedians want to make you laugh. They want you to enjoy the show, and they want to speak their minds. They want to actually say what everyone else is thinking. Okay? They want to be able to push through and take that stand in a way. What I don't like, on both sides, the comedian who tends to go like, I want to personally offend just for the sake of it because it's good for the numbers. Or, I want to bring up this topic because it's a really hot topic and it can offend people. Like if I go on stage, I have a show tomorrow, and if I go up on stage and I say, you know what, nah, I think it's a good thing to see them cut off abortions. We need more crack babies or something like that. It feels forced. It feels unnatural, and it'll get laughs because it's recent. So there's a friend of mine called Nadine Yatim.
Yeah, and he's also into that referral game. He's all about that, is he?
He is all, like Nadine.
Yeah.
She's all about
Sorry.
that. She's actually the first, I think, one of the first female Muay Thai people to go out of the country and fight. And she's like constantly, Abdullah, how about you go in Muay Thai? We'll go work out together and everything. And I'm like, I don't want to get beat up, please. Please. And I'm like, but at the back of my mind, I was like, no, I'm just very busy. That's what I like to say to her. But at the same time, I wouldn't mind trying it, because I think if it happens a third time, that's when I'm going like, okay, I might register.
Oh, okay. So it's a 3-strike limit.
Yeah, if Bill Burr next month, he goes up on stage and all of a sudden it's like, someone attacked Bill Burr. I was like, okay, where's the weights?
In the online world, I mean, you're not getting as much physically attacked as you get like swatted. Right? And that's scary as hell, because people have died from being swatted.
Yeah, 100%.
Right? And especially if you're doing a live stream or anything like that, and you're making jokes or you're topping a topic that people don't like. Timcast IRL, famously, I think they've been swatted, I think, like 6 times.
These are the streamers, correct?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Like, it's sad to see, it's sad to hear, it's sad to feel, and it's scary to understand that is the human race. That is the level that we're willing to go through.
You know what I think it is? I think that they feel like they have some sort of divine calling, like they need to enact, they need to do something in order to save the world. I think that's their mentality. When they do that, when they do the swatting, when they hit someone on the stage, they feel like they're protecting a whole group. They're standing up. Right? It's all in their head. It's all altruistic. You know, it's the same people that during COVID. Well, now that we've said COVID, we're gonna get shadow banned, but whatever. That people went around and they would tell you like, put it on your fucking nose. Put it up on your nose. You know the mask.
Ah, okay. I see what you mean.
Yeah, and somebody made a bit about that, and I really resonated with me, because I think that there is some truth to that. These people who are like these Karens, these really aggressive people, probably had no controls in their life or very little. And now someone gave them a big stick. Yeah. Now someone gave them power and said, you're saving the world. And that's enough for them.
Yeah.
And as long as they're feeling altruistic about it. Tim Dillon made exactly that whole speech. I'm just referring back to him. Yeah. And I think there's real truth to that. There's been plenty of people who've been witch hunted for
Kevin
this
Hart.
Case. Sure.
Kevin Hart.
With that gay joke where you'd
10 years ago. Can you imagine the amount of tweets Kevin Hart would post? Them having to go all the way at the bottom. There was effort and intent.
I mean, it's not that much effort, because you can just put it on the search feature and go oldest to newest. And it'll show you the oldest. You just have to, it's just
the amount of effort required for pressing those 2 buttons. No, but the point still stands that you looking for that stuff had intent.
I mean, it's not just Kevin Hart. The Marvel director, I forgot his name right now, James Gunn. He famously made some pedophile jokes 15 years ago or something like that, and people hounded him for him just to start his career, right? Which you're like, okay.
Yeah, I remember that situation, and it hurt because it was like, he's such a good director, and I think he's moved past that stuff. So my thing is, when I was 21, I was a completely different person than I am today. Okay, and that was like, what, 5 years ago. But when I was 22, I was a completely different person from then. And I was also that edgy, non-PC kid. So are we not allowed to change as human beings?
Road v. Wade.
Yeah.
By the way, the woman Road isn't her real name. It's not trompe-l'oeil. It's a pen name, because she wanted to hide her identity. What a lot of people don't know is that she did give birth. She did give it up for adoption, and then towards the end of her life, she became an advocate believer of life, and she became very against abortions.
Okay.
towards the end period of her life.
Oh,
But
wow.
nobody like brings these points up. No one talks about it. No one goes like,
Oh, wow.
maybe we should
Oh,
we should look into this a
wow.
little bit.
Understand is the layman's just abortion خلاص ما في. That's what I know generally. But overall, from what I understand, they originally were like they were allowing abortions throughout the entirety of the United States. However,
So we should, okay, we'll get into this topic.
yeah,
now.
let's just get into it. Like I think in that we've brought it up multiple times. So I think
By the way, I love how two guys are talking about Roe v. Wade.
yeah, I know, right? It's like
there's a conflict of interest.
oh, 100%. It's kind of like what's going on right now is basically, and we think what is better for women because we understand what is woman.
Dave Chappelle has a great bit about it. He goes, all that matters is who I get pregnant with.
Yeah.
I think, which is great.
You know what's funny though? You know what's hilarious? Everyone's like blaming religion and everything. It's not haram in Islam.
Okay, I'm not very religious, so I'll believe you immediately.
Yeah, oh, perfect. It's not haram. It's not haram in Islam.
Listen, I don't have a problem with it. I don't really have a foot to stand on it because it doesn't really bother me. I don't really give a shit.
No, but I like my perspective, my take overall is, and the thing that I personally find funny is when like the Catholic is like, no abortion, no abortion, no abortion, and then the other side goes like, we don't mind. Do whatever you want to do. Leave the choices on you. I don't care.
Oh, that's not true. I think that's because of like you watch a lot of MSN and CNN. If you watch some Fox or conservative channel, you'll hear a lot of like anti-abortion people yelling their like lungs out.
Oh wow!
It's amazing how skewed the media is.
Yeah, they're fucked over there.
Roe v. Wade judges at the time. I think it was first enacted the bill. I could be mistaken, in the 1970s. And then look at the comments that the judge said, because each judge said a bunch of comments on the case. Some believed it was a voter issue. We're not talking about the current one that it just occurred.
Okay, so a little bit about like the actual take originally. So why it matters. In Islam is halal, and the first 3 months is okay. You can get an abortion. Then after that, it's not.
Okay.
So I don't know exactly how that equates. It's for like most
U.S. law, you mean?
No, not U.S. law. Just like generally, pregnancy-wise for women, is that too late? Is that too soon? Is it what? Whereas I think after 6 weeks, they won't even know it's there.
Here, that's the part.
Oh, okay.
From Justice O'Connor, accommodating the conflicts of personal rights and compelling state interests that are involved with the abortion context. Which fascinates me is the idea of state interests into abortions, because your rights are only to the extent of it becoming then a state interest, which I find absolutely fascinating. Both your intellectual property, the ideas you come up with, everything, your freedom goes to the point where then it becomes a state issue.
Okay. So,
and by the way, almost every state, as far as I know, which is also, by the way, incredibly difficult to find because I spent hours yesterday searching up, every state has some sort of abortion laws, which bans abortions at certain points. And usually it comes at term 3 or stage late stage abortion, which would be when the baby is able to live outside the body.
Yeah. I think overall that's everyone can agree upon that. Like after a certain point, like stop. Like you don't want to go getting an abortion when after 10 years of being pregnant. Well, that just went over your head.
No. I'm listening, but I'm just having in my head
Okay, did you get that? Yeah. 10 years after getting pregnant. Yeah.
I heard it. I'm just ignoring it.
I'm like, God damn it, lay off it or something.
That's called a murder-suicide pact at that point.
I know. Cut that out, please. Cut that out, please.
Because it didn't land?
Not at all.
We're definitely keeping that in.
No.
We're definitely keeping that in. It made me
I told you I was not funny.
We're definitely keeping that in now. 110%.
So back to what we were saying, like there has to be that limit. There has to be that limit. It's like
Talk about a switch of personas right there.
it's like
Jesus.
naturally able to go back to that state and that exact same sentence where it's perfectly cut.
Where when they talked about like these issues that the Roe v. Wade could mean that it bans abortions at every state, or some states would ban it outright, I don't think that's what states are actually saying. I think what most states, in some capacity, are saying is that they don't want to have women being able to have abortions at stage 2, so which is past 23 weeks.
Okay.
Which is the point where the fetus has a heartbeat. Right. So that's where the conflict then arises.
Okay, so I guess so. Overall, here's my personal, honest to God take. Some people need abortions for different reasons. Okay. Generally, it just being boiled down to that personal opinion. Is how do I explain it? I'm trying to gather my words so I don't get canceled.
That's too late already, son. That's too late.
100%. I should have realized what I was walking into.
We're already on this boat now. We're just sailing down the river.
And you're going deep in there. It's like, no, I think Roe v. Wade should have been overturned and everything. And I think, honestly, that the personal choice is not important. And I'm just sitting there going like...
The next guest is we're going to bring in...
I just got funny, okay?
We'll bring in Alex Jones and we'll sit him, the three of us together. We'll really get into it deep then.
Wow. So... My general thing is, in that the choice itself does belong to that person. Because if you're gonna go traveling all the way to the other side of the country to get an abortion, at a certain point it just becomes, what are you avoiding? And here's something that you might personally not agree with, is the criminalization of it. Generally, where people trying to get Chisma would get either fined incredibly, or they would get manhunted in a way. I think that I'm not sure about the actual legality of that or the actual documentation, and I don't personally have proof. But I've heard a couple of times that those laws were enacted, where they were trying to basically hunting people down who were planning on either getting an abortion, or they were being put in a position where, yeah, I mean, it was so bad, like it was so badly targeted and so badly fined, where it just becomes, you'll think twice before even doing anything about that.
But I understand where you're coming from, but if we're talking about late stage abortions at this stage, right? I mean, I don't have a problem if you want to have an abortion. I don't think I really have a leg to stand on when you have an abortion, really. You're right. I'm not even sure if we all live in the same reality. So, right?
Okay.
I'm not sure in any of these things, and I'm willing to be swayed by harder hearts and harder intellect. My thing is just, at a certain stage, can't you just give it up for abortion? Right? I mean, I mean, does it matter at that point? Like, if you're already 6 months into being pregnant.
No, then that's...
Do you get what I'm saying?
6 months, I think, is too far in, though.
I mean, that's late stage abortion is after 6 months. Most the confliction occurs between 0 to 3. I think every state, even after Roe v. Wade, will allow abortions between 0 and 3, right?
Okay.
People don't really understand that. They don't get that into whatever mind frame. They're just having this like anxiety attack, thinking it's all going to be outrightly banned. What they're concerned about is between the stages of 3 months and 6 months. Okay. That's where the most of the debate is happening.
No, but I've also heard there were situations where they wanted to reduce it to 6 weeks.
There are some states. There are some states that
you don't even know if you're pregnant then.
True.
Yeah, you don't even know if you actually have a baby growing inside you.
True, but I think there's a larger scale issue on this, and I think the reason why it was overturned was because of the low birth rates in the U.S. Can you look up what the birth rate is down in the U.S.?
Is that the actual case?
No one has said so publicly, but I think there is an interest, I think. And remember what that judge said about the moment it becomes a... Can you look at the trend? I think the population of the U.S. growth rate is is around 1.5, because in order to sustain the population, you need a minimum of a birth rate of 2, right? Because it takes 2 people to make a child.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's when we get into like different things that will get me canceled for sure. Like the alphabet people.
Oh right.
Yeah.
I don't think that has so much to do with it. I think there is some sort of truth that the U.S. is. I mean, every country is worried about. I mean, Japan has been worried about it for the last 50 years about its birth rate. And
no, but those people are just not having sex, and it's not even a gay issue at this point. It's an AI issue. It's like electronic dating and stuff like that. With it's like, hey, I'm just too busy to have sex. It's like we'll give you. We'll give you like a 4-day weekend kind of thing. Just go for it. Like,
but
please.
That's the same thing with China, right? They had the one-child policy for years and years, and then they enacted a two-child policy because they realized that they suddenly had a population that was something like 60% men. Can you look that up, Dan? How much percentage of men?
Shit.
The China's population between men and women? I think men are.
So it's still like a two-person, right? Or did they?
Now it's two. It was two persons, and now they've increased it to 3. But they can't get.
Oh, okay.
Female population is 48% and 51% are men. So we have 1.28% of men, and the entire population of almost 2 billion people, which is 100 million men who are not able to find a partner.
Oh wow.
No, sorry, 10 million men is 1%, right? Yeah. So it'd be 10 million people. That's 10 times Bahrain's size. Just can you imagine all of Bahrain?
Not being able to get
10 times Bahrain, or all of Saudi Arabia almost. Or no, actually all of UAE has about a population of close to it's about 10 million population of UAE, I think.
I think it's 10 million, but like 10% actually UAE. But I get what you mean. That is insane.
That is wild, isn't it?
Not just. Okay, so I think it bit them in the ass in a way.
It did.
The whole China thing, the whole one person policy, because then they saw the weird stuff that were happening. They saw, because you can't control that in the same time, because there was a lot of heartbreaking stories where it's like, I can't keep this child, like I have this child, but I don't know like what to do with it, or situations where they're literally throwing baby girls in trash cans and stuff like that, and like you sit here and you just go like, okay. Like there's no mercy, there's no form of mercy for my child.
But that's also because we're gonna get in trouble with YouTube for saying this, but that's also because of bad policymaking in China.
Yeah, 100%.
Right? If they would have encouraged the whole adoption proceedings and stuff like that, they wouldn't be in this issue where so much of their female population suddenly dissipated because of abortions and throwing them in gutters and all kinds of crazy shit.
I think it's the best way to put it is they didn't think it through.
I agree.
Yeah, just 100%. Just not being able to. Okay, we're gonna get this, but it's like, wait, half of our pride comes into having a man, and so it's like, oh shit, what are we gonna do now?
Well, there is a lot of conflicts that are arising right now in the Western world. Heart disease are on an up and up. Obesity, 2 fat guys here talking right now. I mean, there is a clear indication that there are issues, right? Generally, intellect is going down. I think IQ has dropped as well. Can you double check that for me, Dan? I think in the US, IQ has gone down, or the West at least.
Is it actually the case?
Yeah, just double check for me.
Because I always had faith in that we were at least like. Okay.
What's the cause of your? What's your cause of your? Not your. I just want the general population. It's because you're a dumb shit. And you do dumb stuff. That's why your IQ is dropping.
So I think overall, I don't believe in that. I don't believe in that. It's just like we've gotten stupider.
Well, I think easily.
Has the ceiling grown? Maybe.
No, I don't think its ceiling has grown. I think it's environmental factors. I think the level of toxicity that exists. Don't forget, in the late 70s, there was unleaded petrol. Think about how much lead that put into a population. Why do you think crime rates were so crazy high in the 70s, 60s, and 80s? 80s it was the drop off really, but the 70s was when it was crazy high.
Okay, so you think that's basically the toxicity and pollution?
I think it's environmental issues that has led to the decline. Testosterone in men is 1/10 of what it was 100 years ago.
Okay, wow.
Right? That's a crazy fall. I think it used to be between 2000 to I want to say it was between 2000 to it was between 2,000 to 10,000. Can you double check for me on that as well? Testosterone rates in men last 100 years.
So here's my thing, right? So overall, so you believe in
There we go. Fact check: testosterone levels are more
50%.
more than dropped in the recent decades.
Well, what's the reason
Almost
behind
50%
that,
in
though?
environmental issues. That's all it is.
Just in global warming and stuff like that, or just in generally in toxicity in the water and stuff like that?
I think it has toxicity in water, the antibiotics. We don't really eat food, like real food anymore. Everything is processed at some capacity. Right?
I see what you mean. But wait, so you're telling me if you eat actually proper meat that has been butchered and everything like that, and that's all you eat, you'd have an increase in testosterone, or?
Well, I mean, the East countries that live a more, what's the right word, rural lifestyle, don't have these issues. They don't have these issues at all.
They don't at all.
Nope. Life expectancy, by the way, and the age range of human beings hasn't changed in more than 2,000 years. Which is, to me, the craziest thing in the world. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor, he lived until he was like 73. Right? The life expectancy of someone was between 28 and 30 because there was so much wars and disease. But the actual life range of how old you could get hasn't changed at all almost in over 2,000 years. This is another thing that there's these misconceptions that we as a society or we just like accept. Like we think that we're actually living longer, but in reality, we are only living longer as a percentage, meaning that more people are able to reach our end of our life expectancy, not because we've suddenly able to grow older.
I see what you mean. So my question is, how do we reach that? How do we increase that gap? And how we can get older to that level extent? I
mean, now we're going to talk about bioengineering and biochemical reactions in our genome. So I forgot what the thing is called. It's the end part of your DNA that controls your age. Can you look that up for me, Dan? I'm asking you a lot of things today, aren't you?
We're getting into a lot of things that require proof, I guess.
Yeah, it's fine. I don't mind. Telometers. That's what it's called.
Telometers.
Yeah, the stretch of the DNA and protein that ends your chromosomes. So the telometers are the thing that controls, in theory, your lifespan, because the fewer of it has, the more mutations it'll cause in your chromosomes, and basically your DNA becomes more and more undone. I think the estimate that science has claimed is 180 years old. They said that's the absolute maximum that
a human being can live.
That the DNA will be willing to carry you.
Okay.
Now there are studies, there are fringe science, I would say, well, not so fringe, that does have an impact on your telometers. Stress, for example, has a huge impact on your telometers. That's why also testosterone is low. People are just chronically stressed all the time. Smoking, environmental factors, all of these things can affect your telometers. And there doesn't seem to be a way to grow it at the moment.
Okay.
And in theory, if you could somehow extend it infinitely, then you would in theory be immortal. In theory.
Okay.
Because the telometers also control your aging and how your cells divide.
Okay, so basically if you're telling me those telometers, they extend.
Yes.
Like if they were to extend, they would actually heal you as well? Or is it just purely
We're not
aging?
X-Men.
Yeah, that would be the dream.
Also, I studied business and so you're asking me questions that are way above my pay grade.
You started it. You started going deep in there, and I'm just sitting there going like...
Because I'm well read. It's not because of anything else.
And then now I'm under... Like, I thought I was well listened.
Yeah.
But But like now I'm like put to shame. Like I'm like, holy shit, this is way above my pay
grade. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, I thought I'm like, it's like, oh, I'm gonna come in, we're gonna have a good chat
Are we
about
not?
comedy.
Are we not? Are we not?
No, for the audience member is like 14 years old. He's been watching Joe Rogan for the past 5 years.
Okay.
And he's like, yeah, I think this is 100% right. Telefocus thing. Yeah,
Telemeters.
tele thingies. We need to advance those. That's what we need. Fuck Roe v. Wade. We need to put money in that.
That is the thing. That is the thing. That's that whole weird cult where like super rich people take blood from like babies and stuff like that and inject it into their body.
What cult is that? I'm interested now.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is this?
There's this, I mean, it's called blood doping. Boxers normally use it with their own blood. Kim Kardashian injects her own blood into her face.
Oh, that shit. That was like.
Yeah. And in some extreme cases, people are saying that they use like infants and stuff like that, their blood type. But it can only apply if it's like a O negative, I think, or O positive. I'm not sure. I think it's O positive.
I need to read what you're reading. I need to read what you're reading because that's some.
And then you can fact check me and be like, Mike.
No, I wouldn't be.
Be like, listen.
Like, listen, that's a lot of fact checking right there. Like, okay, so here's my thing, right?
Go, let's hear it.
Here's my thing. People need to die.
Okay.
People, like, I think enough is enough to a certain degree.
Sure.
That sense of, like, because one, you've all heard the cliches and the beautiful part of life is that it comes to an end. That we've all heard that stuff. We've all heard of that philosophical side of things. But at the same time, the human being needs to live his life, go through that, and in the end of it, die. Okay. Otherwise, we're just hoarding people, because that. So China came from good intentions, like that one. Even though we think that they weren't thinking it through, it caused a lot of problems. But their intention was, we need less people because we can't sustain this many people. Okay, sure, our factories are being built and everything like that, and we got a lot of people working, but after a certain limit, we won't be able to maintain all of this.
Are you talking from a global perspective?
I'm talking from a global perspective. Not
now. It's time to let's because I have a feeling the world can support almost 100 billion people to if not even more than that. Can you double check that for me, Dan? I'm brutal with you today. Sorry.
100 billion people.
Yeah.
So
just type in how much can the world support population.
Like,
think about it this way. Look how big Bahrain is, and look how much of empty space there is. Think about Saudi Arabia. Think about how much empty space there is.
Yeah, but how much are we through the cars, through the? It's like, I'm too scared to talk because all of a sudden you'll pull up a reference or something that's like shocking to me. But
here, it fluctuates between 500 million people to more than 1 trillion. Well, clearly, I mean, I don't know who came up with the estimate of 500 million people, but
that is a huge range, though.
Yeah, I mean
that's like 1 to a billion.
Yeah, but we already have almost 8 billion people on the planet. So whoever came up with 500 million
we reached 8 billion?
Yeah, I think we're close.
Look up look at the population.
Look it up. I think we're close to 8.
Yeah, but like that is okay, so you wait. But our size right now is causing all the pollution, causing all the problems with the space. A lot of environment has been cut off. Okay, but with 8 billion people. Now imagine if we double that size.
Sure, but when we're talking about pollutions, it's a very difficult topic because not every protein is the same, and not every pollution factor is the same, right? If you're talking about lead, you're talking about carbon, you're talking about mercury. You know, these have all different implications, right? I mean, the ocean is poisoned with so much mercury that you can get mercury poisoning if you eat deep sea fishes, like swordfish, for example, is very famous for that.
Oh shit.
Yeah. Lead. So because of how heavy metals react, they normally go to the obviously because they're heavier than water. They end up the floor bed of the sea, and so countries, for example, like Japan and the U.S. that eat eel, in sushi. U.S. recommendation on eating eel is once every 3 months, just because of how toxic eels are in the U.S. And in Japan, it's recommended once every 2 weeks, I think.
Okay.
Because they have different pollution, they have different ways of how they go
that
about
just
it.
adds on to my point, right? And there's a lot of let's say, if we do reach, like you said, 100 billion people, okay, how would that generally be affected? Like, how would we generally affect the planet?
That's a good question.
There is open space, but should we take it?
I don't think it's so much as a question of open space. I think it becomes more of a question of the innovation and government legislation that is required on pushing technology that is more eco-friendly, right? It's not like we can't make factories that don't pollute. It's not like we can't make factories that can capture
cheaper?
lead. It's just cheaper.
Yeah, so we're going on to that same problem. There's a fundamental problem of greed that we have.
I don't think it's greed. I think it's incompetence from a politician perspective, especially in the U.S.
Is it actually
Fuck, now we're getting really in trouble if we're saying this stuff.
No. But is it actually incompetence?
It is.
Or is it actually because, hey, I'm getting this X amount of money, or I'm getting this X amount of things?
Well, the problem is, if you look at it from an economic perspective, the negative externalities isn't properly calculated into the unit price. And so if the negative externalities and the costs associated to that action would be included, then it just makes sense, right? Then you wouldn't look at it as a decision that would make sense. You'd be like, oh shit, because we do X thing, we pollute X thing, and we do X thing, therefore we're going to have to pay for all that other stuff. That's only if you have a competence of strict legal requirements and stuff like that. One of the famous examples is China. China does more than any other country to limit pollution, and it's affecting their growth. And they're still having double digits growth, but
it's not as much as
as before. But that's because they're incredibly stringent on their pollution.
Yeah, but like, come on, like, you're going to tell me that there isn't a factor of hey, I could be making more. I could be creating a lot more and more. I want more as a human being. There isn't that level of generally, I just need to reach that level. You know,
that's interesting they bring this up. I forgot what the modus operatus is, but there's a number which is about 40K, which means that prior to hitting 40K a year, this is US obviously, productivity increases with salary. Right? And as soon as somebody hits about 40K a year, every additional dollar to it doesn't increase directly productivity, because all your basic necessities, your needs are met. And so you're not willing to work, let's say, a 10-hour, 12-hour, 14-hour shift if that increase is already...
There's already that cap.
When you already met your cap at 40. Do you get what I mean?
I get what you mean. So literally, how I'm seeing things and what I'm generally scared of is, there was this one statement from like a friend of mine told me about this podcast. I don't remember which one it was, but they were talking about how they're millionaires, like 100 millionaires. Okay. And they're just sitting there and they're talking, and generally, and one of the things they said is like, I'm not satisfied.
Sure.
I want that billion.
Sure.
And okay, to when do you need on your own personal fund or your own personal assets that much money?
I would say, and I may be this is maybe hyperbole, or maybe this is a gross statement to make. I think most people who have 100 million are not the kind of person who's going to say like, or majority are not going to say like, I need to be that billionaire. My thinking of it is that as wealth increases, so does the associations of responsibility and risk. You know, Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, none of them ever wanted to be so wealthy or powerful that they suddenly have to worry about their life of their children. being attacked or kidnapped or being maybe bombed or murdered. These are not like things you tell a random what they think about. If you say to somebody like an entrepreneur or something like that, do you want to be a billionaire? They go, yeah. But if you tell them, you know, it would mean that complete scrutiny of your personal life, you wouldn't be able to go and walk around the street anymore because you'd have to have a security detail with you. A lot of people, after experiencing that life for maybe a week, will be like, you know what? This is not the life I want to live.
Yeah, I guess. You don't know until you reach the other side, right?
Grass is always greener, right?
Yeah, 100%. So one of the things I personally experienced. No. There's a lot of people who are like, I want to get famous. I want to get famous for the sake of getting famous. And since I do the stand-ups, like the stand-up events and everything like that, a lot of people tend to contact me. You can see in their eyes that they're trying to reach somewhere.
Sure.
They're trying to reach a specific plateau, or they're trying to reach a specific platform.
Sure.
And they sometimes even blatantly say, I want to be famous.
Sure.
And I want to use this as a platform.
Okay.
And it becomes obsession. And you see other people who do it. And they like in the Arabic scene, it's blatant. It's to a point where I'm going to go out in my own way and make controversies in my own light, where I'm going to cause a lot of problems and become famous through that. Now back to the original the topic of that wanting to reach there. Once they finally reach there, they realize, oh shit, I reached there because of the wrong intentions.
You become infamous rather than famous.
There you go.
I agree with that, but there's a flip side towards that, and which is the inability to make decisions or decision paralysis. You know, it's not like Kodiak, it's not like Blockbusters or any of these firms that have suddenly disappeared because of bad management. Well, yes, I mean, in a sense, bad management. But what made them disappear was because they were so scared of becoming infamous. They were so scared of making a decision, hedging a bet on the future that could turn out badly, and then they would be looked at and shunned. Yeah. And that's what led to their inevitable death.
So you're a business type. So you're
Sure.
a business type, and you know a lot of people who are in the business scene and the startup scene. And
Sure.
And I don't know how long you've been in that realm, but have you noticed a flip in that where now taking risk is the best option?
Well, it's always been the case of where your geolocation is, right? U.S., the reason why it is such an innovative country is because of the culture. The idea of you starting a business, you struggling, and you failing is appreciated. It is seen something to elevate. And VCs, venture capitalists and stuff like that, see that you started a business, you struggled, and you failed. And from their perspective, they go, well, they did try. They failed, but they learned. And that individual is keeping trying.
So do you see a lot of
do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, 100%. But
you don't see that in the rest of the world. You don't see that. You don't see that in Europe. You don't see a company. Like if you would talk to a random guy and saying like, I'm starting this business, I'm starting this pub, I'm trying, I'm doing. The moment they go broke, they've been red listed.
Really?
You know, it's going to be so much harder for them to get the necessary finance to start the next project.
The more money they do get, the more the harder that redemption story is. Like if they were able to get a lot of like let's say if you were getting $100 million investment, okay, correct me if I'm wrong.
Sure.
You get $100 million investment, and that's your estimate. That's where you're going. But really, you needed like 20 million.
Sure.
Okay. That fall from grace is hard, and it generally will look at that as like, well, you've fucked up $100 million.
Well, that's
how hard is that? How easy is that to do?
Well, see, this is where it comes interesting. We can go into this topic in various forms. For start, any person who gets 100 million, whatever they're buying assets wise, that's recyclable. That's not a total loss of 100 billion because you're buying machines, servers, your intellectual goods, licensings, whatever, patents. That money isn't just like, it's a sunk cost, surely, sure. But that's not like it's just vaped away. So there is an aspect of reselling that equipment or doing whatever, right? So it's not fair to just look at it and say, well, you took 100 billion, you put it on lottery, or you gambled it.
No, of course not. Well,
right?
Yeah.
And then from the other aspect, you have to look at it from a venture capitalist. If they give out that 100 billion and they lost that 100 billion, they can count that against their taxes.
In what way? Like explain.
I'm
not American.
If you go to a VC, right, and
I got a heart attack with 10% of that.
all right, so if you go to a VC in the US, right, and you start kind of a business enterprise, you get a bunch of different VCs who are willing to put in the money, right? You get the talent pool, you do your stuff, blah blah blah. For whatever reason, it fails. It doesn't work out. Normally, what happens in that the assets then gets torn apart. Mm-hmm. There's a special business and term for it. I forget the name for it right now. What are the animals called in desert who pick off
vultures?
So there's a whole industry called vulture industry where they go like to businesses that have failed and then take apart and then make scratch and money on that. But anyways, from the VC perspective of making that loss of that cash component, when their taxes are due, they can use that loss against their profits, which then lowers their tax rate.
Okay.
Right?
But to a certain degree, what I'm trying to get at on that specific thing is,
so it's a win-win for
reputation,
VC.
If you do lose that, it's a win-win for the VC. But if you lose that 10 million, like if you're, let's say, if you lose that 100 million.
You're talking about a personal person and stuff like that.
It's hard to come back from that.
I would say
it's harder to come back from that than taking $1 million.
I would say yes, but also don't forget that during that 100 million period, you made an enormous amount of connections.
So you can make it back through that.
So you can use that connections and leverage it to get whatever job or next industry or whatever else. A company is only as good as its people. That's fact.
Okay.
Right? Doesn't matter how good you are. It's all about how good the people are.
Example done.
Exactly.
Great job, man.
Exactly.
The second event of Animania, that's the first one I went to. And it was so tight knitted, and you get to talk to all these different people who are interested in anime, and it was like this weird sense of like, oh, everyone's like talking to each other, everyone's like being friendly with each other, everyone's trying to, and people would go later years just to meet up with those same people, and it became so communal. And later in the years, it became more commercial, and it became a lot more people can go and just visit, and it became more popular with that kind of withered down. But I think that small glimpse kind of it gave people the ability to meet up with friends.
Okay.
Like I still talk to people who I've met through those channels. I've still met people from those. I've still been able to connect with people or hear about weddings from those specific events.
Fine. I agree with that statement where you're coming from. That's an event that happens once every 6 months, once a year.
So how do we do that in a regular case?
Right?
Yeah. How do we do that in a regular case?
Right.
Joe Rogan. Who do you who in association do you know of Joe Rogan?
Like personally, none.
No, not personally. Like just out of what you heard or what you've seen or what you've heard, just because of Joe Rogan, Ari Shaffir, Bert Kreischer, and so on and so forth.
Sure.
That Tom Segura and so on.
Joey Diaz.
All these people, and they've been there from the very beginning. He brought those people up with him.
Yes.
Okay. So you've got other situations where it's like Kevin Hart has produced. Dave Chappelle just recently produced a Netflix special from a different earthquake. Okay. He's brought those people up with him. They generally, it was for them. They've already have that community. They already have that simple thing. And for them, it's generally, we're going to grow this out and see where it goes. But since I'm already up the top, I'm going to bring my friends with me. I'm going to bring the people that I personally value with me.
Andrew Schultz makes this point exactly in this podcast. You'll have to turn off the audio. He makes this point exactly in this podcast, saying that Joe Rogan is not the standard. Joe Rogan goes to these comedians and helps pull them up.
And what do you mean?
In their career, in giving them opportunities, coming on to shows, on touring. He makes exactly this point, that Joe Rogan is the outsider in the comedy world. that the rest of the people in this industry are not trying to help you up,
Yeah.
right? And that was my point of what you were trying to say.
Yeah.
With the Joe Rogan part is like, yes, because he is the outside factor. He is the unusual of the usual.
Okay, if that's the case, then yeah. No. Then 100%. This is very unusual. But when you reach a specific level, you start to bring people with you, either or. It's not like, for example, Andrew Schultz helped Akash Singh.
Sure.
Okay. Who else? Just recently, I have a friend of mine who's a Kuwaiti comedian, Ahmed Shimmari. He's bringing up people because he wants. He's known
because that's my
Comedy
argument.
Central,
Sure.
Shawhead, all those platforms. That guy is literally helping out people left and right, and trying to help grow that scene. Keeping in mind, there is a selfish intent, but everything that does. Everything, regardless.
I totally hear where you're coming from, but my this is exactly what I was originally saying. I was saying that Middle Eastern countries, specifically Bahrain, because this is my experience here, are more oriented to community.
Yeah.
And
it's a collective.
And Andrew Schultz, by the way, he even makes that statement. He says because of Joe Rogan helping people out, now other people at his level feel like they have to give their dues.
Yeah.
And you just posted about Carl, what was his name? The comedian Carl.
Yeah, I know. George Carlin.
George Carlin. He's never helped anyone up, as far as I'm aware of.
Yeah.
Right? Don Rickles hasn't helped anyone up, as far as I'm aware of. Bob Hope, Johnny Carson, all these old timers. Right?
100%.
They'd push you down the cliff or push you down the stairs. They're not there to help you.
Yeah. But
there's a really good company. His name is Rooster Teeth. If you've heard of them.
Yeah.
Back in the old days, when Bernie Burns was still on the show, he would talk about it and talk about the interesting difficulties of running a comedy entertainment centered business. One of the most interesting things he said was, we used to send it by DVD, like the video file of the Red versus Blue. And the DOD and the CIA got involved because suddenly they were sending these packages to these weird ass addresses.
Oh shit!
Yeah, from this apartment. So they had to go through a whole investigation process.
Holy shit!
Yeah, he talks about it on the show. He said he just had government agents just one day knocking on his door. And they couldn't we're talking
pre-internet this, right?
Yeah, this was just in the 90s, right?
Holy shit.
And so they had a big difficulties of trying to explain to them no, people are paying to watch this content.
Oh my god.
yeah, it's super fascinating. And they talked, the moment they felt that they were successful was they had a server rack, and they had a green light basically come on every time someone accessed the website. And he said, I knew we were successful when that light stopped blinking. It was just green.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
And he said something ridiculous, their at one point their fee was $10K of internet fee. We're talking back in the day when because so many people were
using that content.
Reusing that content, but they were also making a request on the server to download the full file in full resolution.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
Okay, so there was. I see.
This is way back in the day.
Holy.
All right. Do you have any joke you want to say so we can at least finish off with a laugh?
مشى لقى مشى.
I like that. I like just the awkward silence. That's what I liked.